Welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast, where I, Genevieve Faulkner, share what I'm becoming aware of. Hello and welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast. My name is Genevieve Faulkner, your host, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hi. So I thought I would start doing some videos or podcast episodes about the different belief systems or what's going on within the subconscious when people are choosing certain things based upon the different things that I've worked on with people. So I thought today that I would share about emotional eating or overeating, what that is really about. There could be other reasons as well, but these are just some of the ones that I've kind of discovered in the process over the years of kind of, doing the digging work and helping people shift their subconscious programs. So emotional eating, there's often, for any kind of behavior or issue that somebody's stuck in, or even a disease, there's usually more than one source point for it, meaning that there is more than one reason why they're doing what they're doing. For emotional eating, one of the reasons why people do that is because they've been entrained into believing that their feelings are wrong to feel, right? So if you grew up in a family that just kind of suppressed everything and just got on with things, and perhaps saw any kind of feeling that you had as an inconvenience, then you would have learned to kind of bury everything beneath the surface. And when you do that, it starts to build and it starts to build. And so the eating is a way of trying to stop the feeling from arising and coming up to the surface. When this is the case, there's a number of things that are sometimes required in order to shift that kind of programming. One, it's actually giving yourself permission to have the space to be with yourself and check in with yourself regularly. So that's something that you can actively do and begin to start doing, is paying attention to, hang on a minute, how much space do I actually give myself for me? Because people who have grown up like that, they've really learned a lot of the time to centralize other people, right? So their world is basically revolving around somebody else's response systems a lot of the time. And so they learn to kind of be the caretaker and take care of others as well, because their feelings don't matter, their needs don't matter, right? And so they can often live these very busy lives, right? They're just getting on with things. So they don't necessarily take that time out to really check in with themselves and be hang on a minute, how am I actually feeling here? Do I need anything? What do I really require here? So that's something that you can begin to do, is actually just taking those moments, doing something for yourself, giving yourself time out, and checking in with how you're feeling. Is there some inner child part of you that is needing some sort of healing? Sometimes when there is that emotional eating, it is the inner child, the parts that are still wounded from whatever it is that wasn't acknowledged and recognized in the past. They're the ones that are hurting. And it's only in the willingness, if that's the case, to connect to those parts and integrate those parts and shift that energy out of that part's confined box, I guess, that things can change, right? The key to healing anything is the willingness to be present with it. And that means the key to allowing yourself to have ease in your life is the willingness to be present with yourself. So there is some belief work that can assist with that kind of programming. One of the things that can be worked on is the kind of reprogramming somebody's mind to know that it is safe and that they're allowed to heal. They're allowed to take space. They're allowed to express their feelings, right? It's not an inconvenience. It's not wrong. So that's kind of the beginning. And then there would be other layers of perhaps, doing some belief work around what the inner child was feeling, what parts, allowing the space for each part to begin to come to the surface and look at what is it that aspect of their self is requiring in order to move forward and to not kind of need to sabotage themselves in a way through emotional eating. So the other reason why people will emotionally eat sometimes is because they're very, very aware of other people's feelings, but they don't know how to deal with those feelings. And so what they'll kind of do is try and eat in order to avoid their awareness. Now, this is something that, if you're living with somebody that has some sort of self-destruct mechanism, perhaps they've got some sort of addiction, drinking, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, even if you're not living with them, we're so energetically connected. If they're part of your family, if you care about them deeply, if there's any kind of dependency on them or codependent type programs, then you can kind of not often have this kind of desire to heal them, while at the same time not know how to deal with the feelings that you're aware of in them. And if you've got any kind of attachment to change, then, or if you've got some cool healing capacities, and you don't have to be a healer to acknowledge to have healing capacities, you can just, that can just be part of your being. You might be trying to take on their energy, or filter their energy, or process their energy, or the programs of what they're kind of experiencing through emotional eating, right? So like the emotional eating, sometimes for some people, it's like a compulsion, right? It's like a need. It's like, having to do this to feel better, which is similar to an addiction, right? So it's the same kind of like energy that perhaps, if somebody's needing to do something that is self-destructive in your world and you're trying to heal that, then it gets filtered through that eating. So when something like that is going on, there's often like stuff around responsibility, and there's also stuff around, codependent type programs, and also being a healer. And you can do kind of some subconscious belief work to shift the programs that kind of cause you to take on their stuff. So in a sense, in order to have ease, because you can't actually change anybody else, and that's part of the destructive pattern when it's somebody else's stuff that you're kind of swallowing down, is that part of the awareness for some people is they don't want to be aware that the other person's not willing to change. And so they're shutting that out, and then they're kind of like swallowing that with the food, right? And so part of the work that has to be done, you can't shift and change somebody else. You can be an invitation for them to change by releasing the points of view that you have around what it is that they're doing, creating a kind of space, releasing the attachment to the way that they are. But ultimately the only thing that you can really work on is yourself. And so working on what it is that kind of creates that enmeshment, creates the dependency, creates the need, creates you trying to heal them, creates the inability to be aware of where they're really at and not, be affected by it, then that can create ease with, being in your body and not kind of having that compulsion as a result of being aware of what they're struggling with. Now, there can be other elements of being aware of other people's emotions also that can tie into this emotional eating thing. So if you're somebody that has people in your life that are perhaps really angry at you, perhaps they're jealous, perhaps they're envious, perhaps they're just sending some psychic attack energy at you, having conversations in their head, going over things, and you're aware of that on some level, you might be emotionally eating to try and shut that out, right? And so there's a process of kind of training yourself to be comfortable with their judgments, be comfortable with their emotional energy. And sorry, I'm getting so, I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm so distracted by that motorbike. So you can do some belief work to really look at what it is that causes that particular energy that they're perhaps directing towards you, what it is that causes you to be the effect of that. So for some people it might be resentment, for some people it might be that jealous, envious energy, so for others it might be more of an actual curse, psychic attack type energy. Usually that stems from, childhood dynamics again, where perhaps if you've grown up in an environment where you had someone really angry, then you're going to have this hypersensitivity to anger, and that's going to cause you to feel overwhelmed by that energy and not know how to deal with it. And when you go into the overwhelm, then you're going to start emotional eating to try and take care of yourself. And so doing some programming around that particular emotion or that particular person. Sometimes there's past life karmic stuff at play where it's like you've got to work on whatever is going on with you and that person. But also there's an element of working on the emotional energy and why that energy has the ability to affect you in the way that it does. Because energy is just energy, right? Any emotion is actually, beyond... it's a frequency, right? So in a sense, like if you don't have any points of view, you should be able to receive the energy and not have a point of view about it. But we create kind of like this attachment or this significance around people a lot of the time, and the relationships we have and their points of view and their judgments and all of this. And it causes us to, then go into these self-sabotage things when we're not able to receive the awareness of how they really feel about us. So sometimes there can be an element of trying to protect yourself also. So it's like working on boundaries is another thing that can assist to stop the emotional eating. Because when when you don't know how to draw the line, when you don't know how to say no, when you don't know how to stand up for yourself, sometimes you'll emotionally eat to create you being a bigger person so that you have more power and strength to be able to stand up to whatever the threat is, right? You don't have to, get bigger in order to have more power. You can actually, when you're willing to acknowledge the power that you have, you can be it, and you can allow your body to be whatever size it is. You don't have to suppress it. Yeah. Now, there may also be another reason where you perhaps have some judgments of yourself, and those judgments are causing you to take the compulsive action based upon the resistance to the judgment sometimes, or the echoing of that judgment. So when we have like these points of view within our subconscious, sometimes they can create almost like this tape that's running, right? And that's going round and round in our head, or it's echoing in our head. And so we're thinking that, we're criticizing ourselves and putting ourselves down as a result of whatever that is. And sometimes those judgments are not even ours. Like it could, again, be other people's points of view that you're aware of. And it can also be ancestral, programs that have been programmed into your DNA, where perhaps they were always judging how they looked. Perhaps they were judging themselves as being overweight or fat or, ugly or whatever. And so if you're judging yourself and you've got this inner critic that's constantly berating and belittling you, then sometimes you might be emotionally eating as a way of trying to comfort yourself. But that's not actually comforting. It's actually creating almost like the validation of what the inner critic is saying. Because when you take the action against your body, you end up creating this kind of negative cycle, like this negative vortex where you start spiraling in that, right? Because you're like, I'm so wrong, I've done this, so one, like, you don't have to make the points of view significant. The less significant the points of view or the judgments are, if you can be with the judgments you have of your body or of yourself, you can actually then begin to change them. But if you're in resistance to them and you don't want to know how harshly you're being to yourself, that's where you become kind of like the effect of them. You make them bigger than you. You make them more powerful than you. So you can do some inner work, belief work, to shift and change the points of view, the judgments that you have about your body or your energy. That begins to change the way in which you behave with your body. Some of you might be emotionally eating because you've misidentified it as love. So particularly for those of you that have grown up in certain cultures, you know, like food can be very much this way of expressing care, expressing love, expressing nurture. And it can be, you know, like it really can be, like you can really make someone feel received and loved and cared for when you cook for them. But when you're not including your body in that process, or if you've kind of entangled your definition of love or care or nurture as being that, and that's the only way that you can receive it, then anytime you're feeling upset or emotional and you don't know how to comfort yourself or make yourself feel loved, then you'll start emotionally eating to make yourself feel loved. So, you know, doing some belief work and shifting your definitions and detaching the energy of love and care and nurture from having to eat or have food can allow you to begin to kind of discover all the other ways that you can express love to yourself or be caring and loving and kind, right? You can begin to explore that without doing the belief work. It's just that you may come up against some resistance at some points. Beliefs kind of create the walls to our reality and what we're willing to receive and not receive. So, you know, doing that inner work creates more ease with moving into a greater reality, but you can actually push through those beliefs too. It just often takes a little bit more of a perseverance through that resistance point, right? Because as you come up against the walls of your reality, there's that the beliefs that are creating the walls will get really loud, right? And that's the perseverance points where you've got to kind of go beyond that wall. Another reason is trying to ground or create safety. So some people think that in order to feel really grounded, they need to eat. You know, that helps them be connected to the earth. It's not actually like what's necessarily true. Like there is the possibility of connecting to the earth and feeling really grounded within your body without having to eat. But again, like when we've misidentified something within our subconscious or linked it to something, we then assume that we have to do this in order to have this result, and it's not always true. So these things can be rewired and changed, and you know, then you can really kind of recognize the power that you have, the safety that you have. You can feel safe in your body, it being the size that it is, and you don't need to compulsively eat. So, yeah. And then sometimes there can be elements of, you know, for some, there can be entities involved in this as well. So, you know, when somebody's got like a capacity, or they've perhaps had a fear of being alone at some point, they've had some sort of entity attached to them, a wayward spirit. Sometimes there can be beings that like to eat through other people's bodies. And I know that sounds a little bit strange, but it does happen. So if there is that compulsive thought all the time, you can also ask, is this actually mine? Do I have any attachments? And you can command that they go to the light, unless they're teaching you something, or unless there's something unresolved and more, you know, they're kind of there to teach you something. They should just go. But sometimes it's a little bit more complex than that. But yeah, so that's kind of all I have to say about that. When you begin to kind of get curious and ask questions around any kind of behavior, you begin to receive the awareness as to what is actually creating that. Now, if any of you have just watched all of that and you're like, but how do I do the subconscious belief work? Theta healing is one way. That is what I teach, and that is what I use to assist people in one-to-one sessions. There are so many other different ways to do it also. You know, find what works for you. Yeah, but if you're interested in theta healing, you're more than welcome to check out, I'll leave a link via this episode, so you can check out my webpage about all the information about that. Thank you for listening, guys. I'm always grateful. And if there is anything that you would like, any behavior or something, you know, that you would like me to dissect the reasons why people do what they do, what are the belief systems and whatnot, let me know in the comments. And yeah, if there's anything else that you'd like to say, you can leave that there too. So thanks for listening, guys. Till next time.